The midterms are less than a day away, and so whatever it is that was going to influence the midterms probably has already happened. So there's no excuse. It's time to make our predictions. And so Dan and I are gonna be locking in what we think is actually going to happen. By the way, I believe our midterm elections pool should be available for you to download if you wanna take part. Basically, we decided to do this kind of like an Oscars pool. So we've got a number of different set categories. We're gonna see how many of these we can get through, Dan. And if we're right or if we're wrong, people can look back once we know the results and decide. But with that said, Dan, why don't we start off with the top level thing? First, in the House, who comes out of the midterms in control of the House of Representatives?
I don't think I'm making an earth-shattering prediction here, but I think for the House, the Republicans are going to win, not just because of the trends that you have with once you have a president with one party, the opposite party usually takes the House afterwards. The way the districts look, the way the temperature of the country is, I think that's a pretty safe bet that a lot of places are saying that the House is gonna go for the Republicans. I would love to be surprised as always, but I don't think it's gonna be too great there.
Yeah, in the end, I'm going in the same direction. I just saw some guy who's got an election model that predicts that the Democrats will maintain it by 2 seats, and hey, that'd be great. That would be awesome, but I don't know. I like the historic pattern that you talked about, that does exist, and things have been trending in the wrong direction. Plus everything is so manipulated in terms of gerrymandering. I believe that the Republicans will end up taking the House, and that one I think a lot of people feel that way. It could turn out to be wrong, and vote either way, everybody. But those are my thoughts as well. Maybe a slightly different situation though when it comes to the Senate. What are your thoughts there?
The Senate is interesting. Everyone's kind of like neck and neck there. I am picking that the Republicans take the Senate based off of momentum. For a while, it was looking like Democrats might hold it out, especially because the Republicans' repeated own goals on things like abortion access. But the momentum has been turning towards, I think, issues towards the economy. I think crime has been used a lot in a lot of these races. And overall, when you get a lot of people end up, especially in this polarized environment, end up voting fairly straight ticket when it comes to party preferences and things like that. So I think if we're gonna predict a red, I don't wanna use the term wave, but if we're gonna predict Republicans taking the House and having momentum behind that, I would assume that there's a little bit of a Senate help with that too. Now, I don't think all is lost, especially as we get into certain races. There's some I've abandoned all hope, but there's a couple that might surprise you in here.
Okay, well, we're gonna get to the specific races in a second. I will say I'm going in a slightly different direction. I'm going to guess a 50-50 Senate, only because they have really gone out of their way to choose some Republican candidates who are completely unacceptable. And I do think that 1 or 2 are going to squeak through, as we'll see. And some of their incumbents who should be kicked out probably won't be. But I think that they hurt themselves in their candidate choice, and I'm hoping that the Dems will be able to squeak through with 50. Maybe this is an aspirational thing. Remember, these predictions are partly our best guess based on the evidence, even understanding that polling is more difficult now than it's been in quite a while. Maybe part of it's aspiration, I don't know. I like to imagine that the Democrats, in theory, will be able to nominate Supreme Court justices over the next 2 years. We'll have to see. So I'm guessing 50-50.
Yeah, all of a sudden Mitch McConnell's gonna become a fan of court packing if Republicans become that, take the House, the Senate. You're just gonna see that flip flop overnight. I'll say really fast though, because this isn't anywhere on there. My most optimistic thing for the election overall are ballot measures and propositions. I think those are when it's hardest to get a lot of political spin. Money plays a big role in a lot of these things, unfortunately. But I think there across the country, you'll see some really bright things with cannabis legalization, with enshrining the right for women and people who give birth their access to choose. I think you're gonna see some positive light spots there when it comes to, oh God, policy? Like that word, remember that? Remember what elections were about, policy? I think you might see some stuff there on those levels. When it comes to the people and the representatives and the senators, we'll get to that, right?
Yeah, no. The reason we don't have the ballot measures on here is it would be too many things. But yeah, I agree. I always find Exactly, it'd be too much. But yeah, even here we have, there's a minimum wage for healthcare workers. There's a marijuana legalization ballot initiative. There's an abortion access initiative. There's a really contentious EV funding initiative. Lots of interesting stuff. In other states, you've got things concerning medical debt and marijuana legalization. A lot of cool stuff. And so we're definitely gonna be tracking that tomorrow during the election. That said, let's start jumping to some of the specific races. Some of these may be easy. Kentucky Senate, Charles Booker versus Rand Paul. What do you think?
Going for my boy Rand Paul. Got to go for it. No, I don't like him, but he's just substantially just favored in this race. You gave a good run, Charles Booker, but I mean, this is just politics in Kentucky right now, and Rand Paul is gonna stay very comfortably incumbented, if that's so to speak.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's no reflection on Charles Booker, but Rand Paul's tough to beat unless you're his neighbor, I guess. Anyway, don't attack senators, but it looks like in this case Rand Paul actually started it. Anyway, with that said, Georgia Senate. We're gonna jump to the high profile one. Raphael Warnock versus Herschel Walker versus what's left of Herschel Walker. Who do you think?
Noted pessimist Dan from the internet says that Raphael Warnock is going to take this one. I think this is going to be probably the only bright spot for the Democrats in the Senate is that they're going to keep this one. I think it's going to be a bloodbath pretty much everywhere else. And I'm also skipping ahead even to the governor's race. But I think that with the communities, and I'll just say it, with the black communities that Warnock and Walker are appealing to very much, like, yes, you have a lot of ingrained conservatism that's being stoked by the party very purposely, but I think he has just run such a horrendous campaign. It's gonna be very hard for Walker to overcome Warnock's incumbent advantage, quite honestly. So that's why I feel positive about that. That's why I've been surprising people.
Okay, well, look, I will say I also think that Brian Kemp is going to beat Stacey Abrams just based on the polling. It's just he's been leading for a long time. So I agree with you there. I also have Raphael Warnock winning, although it's the one that like when I post it, like I have the most anxiety because a lot of the other candidates are really bad. But come on, America, it's Herschel Walker. And he has kept talking, and every word out of his mouth has been more disqualifying, and the sheer number of insane scandals. This is on the Trump level. Like this is voting for Walker is as crazy as voting for Trump after everything that we knew. Honestly, it's worse because Herschel Walker's worse at expressing himself. This is the bare minimum bar for a functioning country, a functioning democracy. We have to be able to beat Herschel Walker. I know that Georgia's Georgia, but it's gotta work. Anyway, let's jump to a medium one. Ohio Senate, Tim Ryan versus JD Vance. What do you think there?
JD Vance. I'm really depressed about that. I just think they've poured a lot of money into him. They've given him a lot of name recognition. Trump has, begrudgingly, I guess, given him support. And Tim Ryan, as best as he's trying, was never, even when we covered him in the 2020 presidential primaries, John, I remember like being in studio TYT then. We're just like, yeah, Tim Ryan on this pool of 20 is easily in the bottom like 16 to 20 as far as like political cachet. At least JD Vance can like rile up a crowd, but like, yeah, he's not going to be great in the Senate. He'll be another, yes man for the Trump Republican Party.
Ugh, I hate it. I think Tim Ryan's been doing like Tim Ryan is not a leftist. Let's be clear about that. But his appearance on Fox I thought was good. He was strong. He stood up for himself. But I don't know. Ohio's tough. They're putting a ton of money into it. The right really loves Vance because he doesn't have a single idea, and they look up to that. So I agree. I've got JD Vance, which is really unfortunate. Let's go through perhaps some faster or more easy ones. Texas Governor Beto O'Rourke versus Greg Abbott. What do you think?
Yeah, Greg Abbott for sure. I'm glad Beto O'Rourke ran that campaign. You got to do a number of different races and you got to get groundwork out there. I just did a really awesome interview with Jessica Cisneros. We were talking about that exact dynamic. And quite frankly, Jessica Cisneros was a lot closer in her race to beating Henry Cuellar than I imagined that Beto O'Rourke will be than Greg Abbott. But like, I think Democrats and the Democratic Party need to have a big presence in Texas, especially over the next couple of years, especially as a lot of these rights are going to be under assault. And so it's important that someone stands up for that. Hopefully this turns into the Democratic Party staying in a lot of these communities they canvassed in because that's been their biggest problem so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think Greg Abbott's going to win because Texas is just the worst in some ways politically. Unfortunately, even though Greg Abbott should definitely be kicked out, but maybe we'll see. They keep talking about how people from California are moving there. Do they get that may not benefit them politically the way that they think it does? Anyway, super fast. Charlie Crist, Ron DeSantis.
DeSantis, super easy. He's got the juice. I'm sorry, he's got the juice.
I think DeSanctimonious has it. Val Demings versus Marco Rubio, Florida Senate.
Marco Rubio.
I think little Marco's unfortunately got it. Okay, the easier ones, perhaps Mandela Barnes versus Ron Johnson, Wisconsin Senate.
Ron Johnson, the polls just favor him. Again, same with the like with Charles Booker, like or Val Demings, like these are or Tim Ryan. These are great campaigns you're running. These are just also really tough campaigns, uphill campaigns. Yeah,
I agree. Okay, Mark Kelly versus Blake Masters, Arizona Senate.
I'm putting Mark Kelly for that one. He's kind of favored. I think Arizona is having this it used to be called blue dog Democrat, which is conservative Democrat kind of vibe thing going on right now, which with Kirsten Sinema, it kind of sucks. But with Mark Kelly, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I have him down too. The polls are pretty clear. They've gotten a little bit closer, but we'll see. Also in Arizona, Katie Hobbs versus Carrie Lake.
I'm just going with the polls on that one because I don't know that very well, but I think Carrie Lake, again, Arizona, they're blue dogs. They're not gonna be fully Democrat, especially that's gonna be one of the states where you see very little straight ticket voting. I think Nevada as well, which I think will ultimately have Republican leadership also, but when you look at the ballot measures, the Democrats will do well.
She is second to Herschel Walker in unacceptableness, I think. I have Katie Hobbs beating her. That's the most likely one where I'm gonna be proven wrong, I think. But it just, again, it's that like it can't be her. It can't be her. But anyway, really fast, we have two more. Pennsylvania Senate, John Fetterman versus Mehmet Oz.
Unfortunately, I've been preparing myself to say Senator Dr. Oz for a couple of weeks now. It's only based on momentum. I mean, listen, Fetterman, incredible campaign. I just think a couple of things outside of his control, the economy, the culture wars, his stroke. I think the stroke is not playing as big of a deal as a lot of people are making it, even though the media's being ableist as hell about it. But I think, and also Oprah coming in last minute going, yeah, screw Dr. Oz, the person I single-handedly made famous. We're going Fetterman all the way, and I would have voted for him 2 weeks ago. I love that little backstabbing, but I'm just, this is a more momentum pick where I'm seeing a lot of the momentum where Fetterman has lost a lot of it lately, and Pennsylvania is also one of those election weirdify states. So
yeah, well, I'm going for Fetterman. I am worried about a lot of the things that you said, but I am hoping that people will be able to see through this ridiculous con man. Final one, super fast lightning round. LA Mayor Karen Bass versus Rick Caruso.
I want Karen Bass. I hate kind of both of them because they're not going to do any change whatsoever. I see Cenk talking about Rick Caruso with momentum. I really hope he's wrong. I hope it's Karen Bass, but I also see a lot of Rick Caruso signs and it's made me feel some type of way. So I put down Rick Caruso, but not because I like him.
I'm not sure. There's been like no polls. I'm supporting Karen Bass. I'm guessing Karen Bass. I have seen a lot of Rick Caruso ads. So I'm worried about, he's spending like $100 million for this mayoral race. It
didn't work for him in the primary, to be fair. So there's a little bit of hope.
That's true. Okay, well, those are our picks, everybody. You should be able to find it online. They're gonna be talking about it in the main show, I'm sure. Dan, thank you for giving me your picks. I will be, I'll be closely watching this. And thank you for joining us on our pre-election show. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.